Don't bend. Don't water it down. Don't try to make it logical. Don't edit your own soul according to the fashion. Rather, follow your most intense obsessions mercilessly. Franz Kafka. Hello, everyone. My name is Sana, and I would like to share a story about how I came to embrace my dreams against expectations of those I love. In the chapters of our early teenage years, we all began to have practical dreams, to an extent. Dreams that aligned with our personal interests, or something that we excelled at, or something our family wanted us to become. From my earliest recollections, the word doctor resonated in the air. A mantra of familial expectation that seemed almost insurmountable. I was not necessarily against the idea of becoming a doctor. However, it definitely was not a career path I would have chosen for myself. Because you see, for as long as I can remember, I was drawn to the art of public speaking. And how it started, you might ask? Well, public speaking entered my life in elementary school purely by chance. So I was this very quiet and reserved kid, more or less content to fall into the background. There's been so many instances where people didn't even know about my presence when I was in the same room as them. And I think that was more or less due to the fact that I just never felt the need to speak up until it was absolutely necessary. And yet, there was this very rare instance where I actually volunteered to read out a story that I had written in front of the classroom. I think I was just very proud of that story, and I really badly wanted everyone else to hear about it. And I still think back to how my heart was racing as I stepped in front of everyone, all eyes on me. But then something unexpected happened. As the words that I had strung together spilled from my trembling lips out into the open air, a switch flipped within. I remember seeing my classmates leaning in, seemingly captivated by these sentiments that I had to offer. And it was a silly story at that, by the way. It was a story about goblins and bears fighting over honey, because honey was a very sacred resource in that kingdom. And yet, that nonsensical story helped me tap into courage and conviction that I hadn't assessed prior. When I spoke, people listened. And even though the nerves arose, I could not deny how more seen and connected I felt to others, but at that moment right there. And after that point, I went out of my way to take out more competitions and give out more presentations. Because being able to speak in front of an audience was the only time where I could exude such confidence that I couldn't do it anywhere else. And as the years passed by, that love for public speaking, as well as my growing fascination for jurisprudence, slowly transitioned into the dream of me wanting to pursue a career in law, to help those who are vulnerable and marginalized in society. See, I have the privilege of getting a higher education, which many others, for whatever reason, may not. And I also know how intimidating the legal system is. And so I want to use that privilege of mine to help other voiceless people one day face the legal system. Things may not always be black and white, but I want to believe that I can use the law to cut through the gray and do what's right. And yet, speaking up for my preference back then felt nearly impossible. My parents dismissing law as unethical only affirmed the narrative playing in my head that I was just being fanciful and impractical. Really, in their eyes, they did not want me to deviate from their idea of the norm, and because of that, I would have to end up facing a new and uncertain reality that they know nothing about. Keep this in mind. Medicine and law, two completely different fields. And yet, I somehow tried to convince myself that I must follow through the so-called default path set for me, thinking that, listen, if it's gonna make the people around me happy that I'm doing medicine, maybe as time goes by, it would also make me satisfied? I mean, that's how it works, right? Right? No, that's not how it works. Because as time went by, I could feel myself shrinking into this two-dimensional version of myself. Something needed to shift before commitments hardened into cement. I needed to start speaking up. It was now or it was never. And it was like I was practically chasing after the idea of becoming a doctor, but that idea was faster than me. And perhaps I also always sensed that if I could move them from a no to even a maybe through the sheer passion and logic within my words, then I owed it to myself to follow through this unconventional path. And so, after months, turned years of conversations filled with tension, drama, misunderstandings, conflict, tears, screams, and somewhat gentle persuasion, I'm able to stand in a new chapter of my life, no longer crushed, no longer being a product, no longer just being a mere product of what other people expect of me, but rather filled with motivation by those who once doubted but now believe in me. I realized that it's okay to pivot, to redefine success, and to discover new passions. And I realized that by standing up for myself and speaking up, I was not just challenging the expectations that were placed upon me. No, I was forging my own path, a path that led to a future I actually wanted to be part of. So listen, does the road ahead still produce anxiety within me for having to build a career in such a demanding field? Absolutely. But whenever those bouts of stress or self-doubt arises, I still think back to that wide-eyed girl in elementary school, standing in front of the audience for the very first time, knees quaking, hands shaking, voice trembling, to speak her words aloud for the very first time. She would have never guessed that her wobbly first steps would have led her to what I wish to achieve today. And I owe it to her. I want to make her proud. And I hope that others, after hearing what I have to say, may find strength within themselves to forge their own unique paths, even when faced with the weight of expectations. Everyone, our brief flicker of time in these bodies passes too swiftly to live out anyone else's dreams but our own. This world needs more transparency. This world needs more conscious questioning of the status quo. After all, as Franz Kafka once again said, paths are made by walking. Thank you.